The first alien ship appeared over Earth on a Tuesday morning. It was massive, shaped like a crescent moon made of silver metal that reflected the sun in strange ways. People around the world stopped what they were doing and looked up at the sky. After 300 years of searching for life beyond Earth, life had finally come to them. The ship belonged to the Galactic Consortium, a group of 7 alien civilizations that controlled most of the known galaxy. They had been watching humanity for decades, waiting to see if these strange creatures would destroy themselves before reaching the stars. Now that humans had colonies on Mars and several moons, the consortium decided it was time to make contact. Ambassador Chen stood in the United Nations building in New York, watching the alien delegation walk through the doors. There were 3 of them. The leader was a Krethian, a species that looked like an upright lizard covered in dark blue scales. His name was War Leader Kravik, and he moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. Behind him walked 2 others from different species, but they said nothing. They were just there to watch. "Humans," Kravik said in perfect English, his translator device making his hissing voice understandable. "We welcome you to the galactic community. You are primitive, but you show potential. The consortium has rules. You will follow them." Chen kept her face neutral, though she felt her jaw tighten. Years of diplomatic training helped her smile politely. "We're honored by your visit. We look forward to learning from more advanced civilizations." Kravik made a sound that might have been laughter. "Advanced? Yes. We have been traveling the stars for 10,000 of your years. We have seen species like yours before. Aggressive, violent, always fighting among yourselves." He leaned forward, his yellow eyes fixed on Chen. "But you are useful. Your asteroid belt contains minerals we need. You will provide them as tribute. In return, we will not destroy your colonies." The room went silent. Every human representative felt their blood run cold, then hot with anger. Chen's smile didn't change. "We'll need to discuss this with our governments. Perhaps we can arrange a trade agreement instead?" Kravik's scales rippled with what looked like amusement. "This is not a negotiation. You have 1 Earth month to comply." He turned and walked out, his delegation following behind. The moment the aliens left, the room exploded with angry voices. General Morrison slammed his fist on the table. "Tribute? They want tribute? Who the hell do they think they are?" "They think they're the dominant power in the galaxy," Chen said quietly. "And maybe they are. But that doesn't mean we bow down." 4 weeks later, Earth's answer was delivered through every communication channel the aliens had provided. It was simple. No. The Krethian response came swiftly. A fleet of 20 warships entered Earth's solar system, heading straight for the asteroid belt where human mining operations were established. War Leader Kravik sent one final message. "You have chosen pain over sense. We will take what we need and teach you the cost of defiance." What Kravik didn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment since the first contact. Not because they expected war, but because that's what humans did. They prepared for the worst and hoped for the best. The battle began near the mining station Hephaestus 7. Kravik expected the human defenders to surrender once they saw his superior firepower. Instead, the humans scattered like insects, refusing to fight in the organized formations the Krethians expected. Human ships were smaller and faster, darting between asteroids, using the rocky debris as cover and weapons. "They fight like cowards," Kravik hissed to his second-in-command. "They have no honor." But the humans weren't concerned with honor. They were concerned with winning. Human marines in armored suits attached magnetic mines to Krethian ships during close passes. Human pilots rammed damaged fighters into alien vessels, sacrificing themselves to take out targets. Human commanders used tactics that made no sense to the aliens, accepting terrible losses to achieve strategic goals. The Krethians had better technology, stronger shields, and more powerful weapons. But they had never fought an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. They had never fought an enemy that treated every battle like a desperate last stand, even when it wasn't. After 3 days of fighting, Kravik had lost 8 of his 20 ships. His fleet limped back into deep space, damaged and confused. The Creathians had won battles before, but they had never experienced victory that felt like defeat. They had driven the humans back, but at a cost that was unacceptable. News of the battle spread through the consortium faster than light-speed communications. The other alien species watched the recordings with growing unease. These humans, these newcomers with their crude technology and small ships, had bloodied the nose of the Creathian Empire. They had fought with a ferocity that didn't make sense. Ambassador Tevex of the Qualari hierarchy studied the battle data in her chambers. She was a scientist, not a warrior, and what she saw frightened her more than any weapon. The humans had lost twice as many ships as the Creathians, had suffered 5 times the casualties. But they had celebrated it as a victory. They had kept their territory. They had made the enemy retreat. The cost didn't seem to matter to them. What kind of species, she whispered to herself, considers such losses acceptable? On Earth, there were no celebrations. There were funerals and memorials for the 3,000 soldiers and miners who died defending the asteroid belt. But there was also grim satisfaction. Humanity had sent a message to the galaxy. We will not be pushed around. General Morrison stood at the memorial wall, reading the names of the fallen. They thought we'd be easy, he said to the officer beside him. They thought we'd give up. What do we do now, sir? The officer asked. Morrison's expression was hard. Now we show them that this was just the beginning. If they think our regular infantry is dangerous, wait until they see what else we've got. 6 months after the asteroid belt incident, 3 more alien species decided to test humanity's resolve. They didn't come together. They didn't coordinate. Each one simply assumed that the Creathians had made mistakes that they would not repeat. The Vrelians came first. They were an insectoid species that fought in enormous swarms, overwhelming enemies with sheer numbers. They attacked the human colony on New Hebrides, a planet with 50,000 settlers and minimal defenses. The Vrelian Queen Commander sent a simple message before the attack: surrender or be consumed. The colonists chose neither. They fought. Major Sarah Chen, no relation to the ambassador, stood on the walls of Fort Providence as a tide of Vrelian warriors rushed across the open ground. They moved like ants, thousands of them, each one the size of a large dog with sharp claws and acidic saliva. Her Marines had been trained for this, not specifically for bug aliens, but for overwhelming odds. Hold your fire, she ordered calmly. Let them get closer. The younger soldiers looked at her like she was insane. The Vrelians were already close enough to see their mandibles clicking together, but the veterans understood. They had studied Earth's history. They knew about Thermopylae, about the Alamo, about Stalingrad. They knew that sometimes you let the enemy come to you. Now, Chen said softly. The walls erupted with fire. Machine guns, flamethrowers, explosive charges buried in the ground ahead of them. The Vrelians didn't retreat. Their species didn't have that instinct. They kept coming forward, climbing over the bodies of their fallen, driven by the Queen Commander's orders. That's when Chen played humanity's next card. Release the sound. Speakers hidden around the fort began broadcasting a noise that human engineers had discovered drove Vrelian warriors into confusion. It was a frequency that mimicked their queen's distress call. Suddenly, the swarm didn't know whether to attack or defend. They began fighting among themselves, their coordination destroyed. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, 15,000 Vrelian warriors lay dead on the field. The human casualties were 412. Major Chen stood among the exhausted survivors, covered in dirt and blood, and sent her report back to Earth Command. It included a detailed analysis of Vrelian weaknesses and a simple note: we held. News of the victory reached the Galactic Consortium within days. Ambassador Tevex reviewed the reports with growing alarm. The humans had done it again. They had studied their enemy, found weaknesses, and exploited them without mercy. They had defended a colony world, as if every single life there mattered personally to them. The second test came from the Horgathian Collective, a machine intelligence species that calculated warfare as a mathematical problem. They sent a fleet to blockade Earth's colony on Titan, intending to starve the settlers into submission. It was a logical plan. Cut off supplies. Wait for surrender. Take the colony intact. But the Horgathians didn't understand human psychology. They didn't understand that a blockade wouldn't make humans surrender. It would make them angry. Earth's response was swift and brutal. They couldn't break the blockade with direct force, so they didn't try. Instead, human ships loaded with supplies used the gravity of Saturn's moons to slingshot themselves toward Titan at unpredictable angles and speeds. Many were destroyed, but enough got through. The Horgathians recalculated. The blockade was costing them more resources than the colony was worth. They withdrew. Again, humanity had won by refusing to play by the expected rules. The Horgathians had predicted human behavior based on logical self-interest. They hadn't accounted for human stubbornness. The third test was the most serious. The Qualari hierarchy, the same species as Ambassador Tivex, decided that humanity needed to be shown its place. They sent a full battle fleet to occupy the human colony on Kepler 442b. No negotiations, no warnings, just overwhelming force to demonstrate superiority. Colonel Marcus Webb commanded the defense of Kepler 442b. He had only 2,000 Marines against a Qualari force of 10,000 warriors supported by orbital bombardment. By any reasonable calculation, he should have surrendered immediately. Instead, he sent a message to the Qualari commander. Come and take it. The Qualari landed their forces in the valley outside the main settlement, expecting a quick battle. What they got was weeks of hell. Webb's Marines used every dirty trick humans had invented over thousands of years of warfare. They poisoned water supplies. They set traps that killed and maimed. They used children's toys rigged with explosives as booby traps, knowing the Qualari scanners wouldn't detect them as weapons. Most disturbing to the Qualari was the psychological warfare. Human propaganda broadcasts filled their communications channels, playing messages designed to create doubt and fear. Speakers, hidden in the forests, played sounds of screaming at night. Human soldiers would appear, kill a Qualari warrior, and disappear before reinforcements arrived, leaving behind messages. You are far from home. We are home. You cannot win. The Qualari commander, General Tacross, had never experienced warfare like this. In consortium conflicts, armies met in open battle. Honor and strategy determined the victor, but the humans ignored honor. They cared only about results. After losing 3,000 warriors to constant ambushes, traps, and psychological strain, Tacross made a decision that shocked the entire consortium. He withdrew. A superior force had retreated from an inferior enemy. It was unthinkable. But Tacross included a detailed report with his retreat. The humans do not fight to win. They fight to make the enemy regret fighting. Every victory against them costs more than it is worth. I recommend we classify humanity as a threat-level species and avoid further conflict. The report circulated through every government in the consortium. Other species began reviewing their own encounters with humanity. A pattern emerged. Humans didn't fight like civilized species. They didn't follow the unspoken rules that made galactic warfare manageable and limited. They fought like they were always one battle away from extinction, even when they weren't. Ambassador Tivex met with Ambassador Chen 6 months after the Kepler 442b incident. They sat across from each other in a neutral space station, surrounded by guards from both species. Your military tactics are horrifying, Tivex said bluntly. You fight without honor. You use methods that civilized species abandoned millennia ago. Chen nodded slowly. You're right. We do. Do you know why? She didn't wait for an answer. Because for millions of years, we fought each other. Humans killed humans over territory, resources, beliefs, And sometimes, just because we didn't like each other, we got very, very good at it. We invented every terrible way to hurt each other that you can imagine, and some you probably can't. Tvex's scales rippled with discomfort. And you're proud of this? No, Chen said quietly. We're not proud, but we're honest about what we are. You wanted to know if we could be pushed around. Now you know. We can't. Tvex was silent for a long moment. Finally, she spoke. The consortium is prepared to offer humanity associate membership, limited access to trade and technology. In exchange, you agree to certain restraints on your military actions. Chen smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. We'll consider it. But understand something. What you've seen so far, the Marines at New Hebrides, the supply runners at Titan, the defenders of Kepler 442b, those are our regular forces, our standard infantry, our line soldiers. The alien ambassador's eyes widened slightly. What are you saying? I'm saying, Chen replied, that if you think our regular infantry is terrifying, you really don't want to find out what our special forces can do. The Zeth hegemony didn't belong to the Galactic Consortium. They operated on the other side of known space, a totalitarian empire built on fear and absolute control. They had watched humanity's conflicts with amusement, seeing opportunity where others saw danger. Supreme Commander Vectis sat in his obsidian throne room, surrounded by his war council. His species, the Zeth, looked almost human, except for their gray skin and completely black eyes. It made them unsettling to look at, which Vectis used to his advantage. The consortium fears these humans, Vectis said, his voice cold and measured. But I see something else. I see a species that can be provoked, that can be controlled through their emotions. We will show the galaxy that humanity is not to be feared. They are to be used. His plan was elegant in its cruelty. The Zeth would attack human colonies, not with armies, but with terror. They would bomb civilian centers, destroy hospitals, make humans afraid. Then, when humanity struck back against Zeth military targets, the hegemony would play the victim to the rest of the galaxy. They would paint humans as the aggressors, the dangerous species that needed to be contained. The first attack hit the colony on Darwin's world. A Zeth stealth ship appeared in orbit and launched missiles at the capital city. 3,000 civilians died in seconds. No warning, no declaration of war, just death from the sky. Earth's response came through official channels. Condemnation, demands for justice, threats of retaliation. Exactly what Vectis expected. He prepared his propaganda, ready to show the galaxy how humanity would overreact with military force. But that military force never came. Days passed. Then weeks. Nothing happened. Vectis began to wonder if humanity was too afraid to respond. Perhaps they weren't so dangerous after all. Then the accidents started. A Zeth military factory on the planet Zeth Prime exploded. The official investigation found it was a malfunction in the reactor core. 20,000 workers died. Tragic. But these things happened. A week later, a Zeth warship disappeared while on patrol. It was there one moment, gone the next. No distress signal. No debris. The hegemony searched for weeks, but found nothing. Space was dangerous. Ships were lost sometimes. 2 weeks after that, the governor of a Zeth-controlled world died in his sleep. Heart failure, the doctors said. He was old. It happened. But then the pattern became impossible to ignore. Key military facilities experienced catastrophic failures. Important warships vanished. High-ranking officials died in accidents that were just barely plausible. And always, there was no evidence, no proof of sabotage, no trace of outside interference. Vectis called an emergency meeting of his war council. Half the members were new. The others had died in various accidents over the past 2 months. Someone is attacking us, Vectis said, his voice tight with controlled rage. But who? And how? General Throck, head of intelligence, was sweating despite the cool temperature of the room. Supreme Commander, we've found no evidence of any foreign presence. No ships entering our space. No agents detected in our facilities. No communications intercepted. It's as if ghosts are doing this. Ghosts don't exist. Vectis snapped. Then explain this. Throck activated a holographic display. It showed security footage from a maximum security prison, where they held political prisoners. The footage showed guards making their rounds. Everything normal. Then, for exactly 3 minutes, the footage glitched. When it came back, the guards were unconscious, and 12 prisoners were gone. This facility is underground, surrounded by military bases. There is no way in or out that we don't control. And yet, 12 high-value prisoners simply vanished. Vectis stared at the footage. His mind raced through possibilities. Then, a cold realization hit him. The humans. The humans. Impossible, Throck said immediately. We're watching all their ships. We have spies in their government. We would know if they sent a fleet or a strike force. What if they didn't send a fleet? Vectis said quietly. What if they sent something we can't see? Something we don't know how to look for? Vec. The War Council fell silent. The idea was terrifying. An enemy that could strike anywhere. Anytime. With no warning and no trace. An enemy that killed and destroyed with such precision that it looked like accidents and bad luck. Vectis activated his personal communicator. This is Supreme Commander Vectis. I want maximum security on all military installations. I want guards tripled on every important facility. I want... The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in 3 seconds later, bathing the throne room in red light. When Vectis looked around, his blood went cold. There, on his throne, sitting where he had been just moments before, was a knife. Pinned under it was a note, written in perfect Zeth language. Throck reached for his weapon. But Vectis stopped him. With shaking hands, the Supreme Commander picked up the note and read it aloud. Stop, or we stop you. You'll never see us coming. No one had entered the room. The doors were sealed. The guards outside hadn't seen anything. And yet someone, some human, had gotten inside the most secure room in the hegemony, left a message on the throne of the Supreme Commander himself, and gotten out without being detected. Vectis sat down heavily in a chair, the note crumpling in his fist. He had made a terrible mistake. He had assumed that because he couldn't see the threat, there was no threat. He had poked a sleeping predator, and now it had opened its eyes. Send a message to the humans, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Tell them we were mistaken about Darwin's world. Tell them it was a rogue element in our military that acted without authorization. Offer reparations. Whatever they want. Just make this stop. Sir? Throck looked confused. We're surrendering? The hegemony doesn't surrender to terrorists. Vectis laughed, but there was no humor in it. Terrorists? Is that what you think they are? He pointed at the knife, still sitting on his throne. Terrorists send messages before they attack. They want attention. These humans? They don't want attention. They want results. They've been killing us for months, and we didn't even realize we were under attack until now. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the capital city of Zeth Prime. The consortium was right to fear them. We thought their infantry was their greatest weapon. But this is something else. Something worse. On a transport ship leaving Zeth space, 4 people sat in civilian clothes, looking like ordinary travelers. They spoke to no one, drew attention to no one. In another hour, they'd reach the neutral port of Avalon Station and disappear into the crowd. Captain James Rodriguez sipped his coffee and reviewed the mission report on his datapad. The others with him, 3 men and 1 woman, all looked relaxed and bored. No one would ever guess they had spent the last 2 months inside Zeth territory, conducting operations that had crippled a military empire. Think they got the message? Asked Lieutenant Sarah Kim, not looking up from the book she was reading. Oh, they got it, Rodriguez replied. Whether they're smart enough to listen is another question. If they're not? Asked Sergeant Marcus Webb, grandson of the colonel who had defended Kepler 442b. Rodriguez didn't smile. Then we go back. And next time, it won't be a warning. The four soldiers fell silent, each one thinking about home. They had done terrible things in the name of protecting it. Things that would give them nightmares for years. But that was the job. That was what special forces did. They went places that regular soldiers couldn't go. They did things that needed doing but that no one wanted to talk about. They were ghosts, shadows. The knife in the dark that enemies never saw coming. And the galaxy was just beginning to understand what that meant. Back on Earth, in a classified briefing room, General Morrison finished reading the after-action report from Rodriguez's team. He looked up at the other officers around the table. Gentlemen, ladies, the Zeth have ceased all hostile actions against human colonies. They've offered full reparations and a non-aggression treaty. I'd say the operation was a success. One of the officers, a Navy admiral, spoke up. Sir, shouldn't we be concerned about escalation? If the galaxy finds out what we did, Morrison cut her off. The galaxy won't find out. That's the point. As far as anyone knows, the Zeth had a run of very bad luck. Sometimes facilities explode. Sometimes ships disappear. Sometimes people die. These things happen. He paused. But we know what happened. And more importantly, the Zeth know. And now they know. To leave us alone. He closed the report file. The galaxy trembled before our infantry. Now they're going to learn what happens when we take the gloves off. And if we're lucky, they'll be smart enough to never find out exactly what our special forces can really do. The Galactic Consortium Council met in emergency session on the neutral world of Tarsus Prime. Representatives from all 7 member species gathered around the circular table, and for the first time in 500 years, fear filled the chamber. Ambassador Tevex of the Qualari hierarchy activated the holographic display. The situation with the Zeth hegemony has forced us to re-evaluate our understanding of human military capabilities. We request formal disclosure from Earth regarding their Special Operations Forces. Ambassador Chen sat calmly across from her, flanked by 2 military advisors. She had expected this. The Zeth incident had been quiet. But not that quiet. Too many people had died. Too many things had gone wrong in too short a time. The pattern was clear, to anyone who looked closely enough. The consortium wants transparency? Chen asked. Very well. In the interest of building trust, humanity is willing to provide a briefing on our special forces capabilities. War leader Kravik, still bitter about his defeat in the asteroid belt, leaned forward. His scales had dulled with age, but his eyes were still sharp. We want to know how you attacked the Zeth. What weapons you used. What ships penetrated their space undetected. Chen smiled slightly. We didn't use ships, war leader. We used people. The chamber erupted with confused voices. It was Ambassador Tevex who restored order. Explain. How can people cross space without ships? How can they infiltrate secured facilities without leaving traces? Let me tell you about Earth's history. Chen began. For thousands of years, while we fought each other, we developed a certain kind of warfare. We called it special operations. Small teams of highly trained soldiers who could operate behind enemy lines without support. Sometimes for months or years. She activated her own display, showing images and video. These are Navy SEALs, sea, air, and land special operators. They specialize in maritime operations, hostage rescue, and direct action missions. These are Delta Force, experts in counter-terrorism and precision strikes. These are Army Rangers, trained for rapid assault and airfield seizure. These are Special Air Service, masters of covert reconnaissance and sabotage. The images showed human soldiers in strange gear, their faces often hidden. Videos played of training exercises, humans swimming through icy water, jumping from aircraft, moving through buildings with lethal efficiency, surviving in hostile environments for weeks with minimal supplies. General Tacross of the Qualari stood up, his massive frame towering over the table. This is propaganda. No soldier, however trained, could do what was done to the Zeth. They had security. They had guards. They had surveillance. Security can be bypassed, Chen replied calmly. Guards can be avoided or neutralized. Surveillance can be fooled or disabled. It requires patience, planning, and skills that take years to develop. But it can be done. Impossible, Kravik hissed. Our own intelligence services have tried such operations. They fail more often than they succeed. The Zeth losses were too precise, too consistent. Chen's smile faded. War leader, with all due respect, your intelligence services train for months. Our special forces train for years. Some of them train their entire lives. They are not normal soldiers. They are the best of the best, selected from millions, trained to a level that most species would consider inhuman. She brought up more footage. This is a hostage rescue training exercise. The team has to clear a building, neutralize hostiles, and extract civilians without casualties. They have 90 seconds. Watch. The footage showed 4 humans moving through a structure with practiced efficiency. They communicated with hand signals and short whispers. Each one seemed to know exactly where the others were without looking. In 83 seconds, 12 training dummies marked as hostiles were down, and 6 marked as hostages were secured. 0 friendly casualties. They train for this scenario thousands of times, Chen explained. Until they can do it in their sleep. Until they can do it injured. Until they can do it in environments they've never seen before. That's just hostage rescue. We have specialists for assassination, sabotage, intelligence gathering, psychological operations, and a dozen other mission types. The council chamber was silent now. Each representative was beginning to understand what they were seeing. Humans had taken warfare and turned it into a science. More than that, they had turned it into an art form. You're saying, Tevek spoke carefully, that you have soldiers who can operate independently in hostile territory for extended periods, conducting missions that can destabilize entire governments, and do so without being detected? Yes, Chen said simply. That's exactly what I'm saying. It was war leader Kravik who asked the question everyone was thinking. Chen's expression gave nothing away. Enough. That's all you need to know. The meeting adjourned in tense silence. But the consortium's curiosity had been awakened. And curiosity among warriors often leads to testing. The Crethean Empire, still smarting from their previous humiliation, decided they needed to understand this threat. Not to start a war, they told themselves, just to gather intelligence, to see if these special forces were really as dangerous as the humans claimed. 3 months later, a Crethean strike team attempted to capture a human special forces unit conducting training exercises on a remote moon. The Cretheans sent their best. Shadowclaw Division, elite warriors trained in stealth and capture operations. 40 of them against 4 humans. The Cretheans had better equipment, numerical superiority, and the element of surprise. The operation lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 38 Crethean warriors were dead. The remaining 2 surrendered, traumatized and confused. The 4 human operators had 1 minor injury between them. They hadn't even called for backup. Rever. The Cretheans had documented everything, planning to use the footage for analysis. Instead, that footage leaked across the galaxy within a week. No one was sure who leaked it, though many suspected the humans did it deliberately. The galaxy watched in horror as 4 humans systematically dismantled a much larger force. The operators didn't just fight. They hunted. They used the environment like a weapon, turning the moon's terrain into a maze of death. They set traps that were invisible until they killed. They appeared and disappeared like demons, always striking from unexpected angles. Most disturbing was the psychological aspect. The human operators didn't just kill the Crethean warriors. They made them afraid first. They used noise to disorient them. They left wounded enemies alive to spread fear among their comrades. They played with their prey before finishing it. At one point in the footage, one of the human operators was cornered by 8 Cretheans. He should have died. Instead, he fought with a savagery that shocked even the most hardened warriors watching. He used his weapons until they were empty, then used his hands, his teeth, whatever was available. When reinforcements arrived moments later, he was the only one still standing, covered in blood, breathing hard, but still alert for threats. The footage ended with the 4 operators sitting calmly, treating their one minor wound, while the 2 surviving Cretheans lay on the ground, disarmed and broken. One of the humans looked directly at the camera and waved. It was a casual gesture, but to those watching, it carried a clear message. This is what we can do. On a bad day, the political fallout was immediate. 3 minor governments that had been considering testing humanity's resolve immediately sent diplomatic envoys offering trade agreements. The Horgathian Collective, the machine intelligence that had blockaded Titan, issued a formal apology and requested an embassy exchange. Even the Vrelians, whose swarm tactics had failed at New Hebrides, sent a delegation asking to study human military doctrine. But it was war leader Kravik's response that shocked everyone. The old Crethean warrior requested a private meeting with Ambassador Chen. When they met, he bowed his head in a gesture of respect that Cretheans reserved for worthy enemies. I understand now, Kravik said quietly. Your infantry frightened us because they fought like cornered animals, desperate and vicious. But these special forces? They are not desperate. They are predators. There is a difference. Chen nodded. Yes, there is. A question, if I may, Kravik continued. These 4 who destroyed my best warriors, they are your finest, yes? Chen actually laughed at that, though there was no cruelty in it. War leader. Those 4 were good. Very good. But they're not our finest. They're just examples of what we can do. She leaned forward. Our finest? Those are the ones you'll never see. The ones who complete their missions and leave no evidence they were ever there. The ones who retire after 20 years and take their secrets to their graves. Kravik's eyes widened. And if we had truly threatened humanity? If we had pushed you to desperation? Then you would have learned what our special forces can really do when they stop playing by rules. When they stop worrying about collateral damage. When they operate with the understanding that victory is the only thing that matters. Chen's voice was soft, but carried steel beneath it. Be grateful, war leader, that you never found out. The old Crethean warrior left the meeting in silence. That night, he sent a classified report to the Consortium Council. It contained one recommendation. Grant humanity full membership status. Give them a voice in galactic affairs. Make them partners, not adversaries. Because the alternative, Kravik wrote, was too terrible to contemplate. The galaxy had trembled before human infantry. Now it understood that the infantry was just the beginning, and somewhere, in the shadows between stars, human special forces operators continued their training, preparing for threats that hadn't even emerged yet, ghosts in the machine of galactic politics, ready to strike if humanity was ever truly threatened. The question wasn't whether they could be stopped. After the footage from the Crethean operation, everyone knew they couldn't. The question was whether they would need to be unleashed again, and every government in the galaxy hoped the answer would be no. The distress signal came from the outer rim, from a region of space the Consortium had marked as empty. It was a Qualari research station. And the message was simple and terrifying. They're here. They're eating everything. Help us. Then silence. The Galactic Consortium Council assembled within hours. Ambassador Tvex brought up the scans from the research station's last transmission. What they showed made everyone in the chamber go still. Ships. Thousands of them. But not ships built by any known species. These were organic, grown rather than constructed. They moved in perfect coordination, like cells in a body, and they were consuming everything in their path. Asteroids, space stations, even the gases of nearby nebulas. Everything they touched became raw material for more ships. The Scourge, Tvek said quietly. We thought they were a myth, a story told to scare children. But they're real. General Tacross pulled up historical records. 3,000 years ago, a hive mind species emerged from dark space. They consumed 17 inhabited worlds before the ancient consortium drove them back. We thought we had destroyed them completely. We were wrong. War leader Kravik studied the tactical data. Our ancestors fought them with massed fleets, overwhelming firepower. We can do the same. Your ancestors had time to prepare, Ambassador Chen pointed out. Time to build those fleets. How long until they reach inhabited space? The calculation appeared on the display. 6 months. Maybe less. The consortium military mobilized immediately. They pulled ships from every sector, gathered their forces, and prepared to meet the Scourge with the largest fleet ever assembled. 15,000 warships, crewed by the finest warriors of 7 species. It should have been enough. It wasn't. The first battle lasted 3 days. The consortium fleet used every tactic they knew, every weapon in their arsenal. The Scourge simply absorbed the damage and adapted. Their ships learned from each attack, evolving defenses against weapons that had worked moments before. When the consortium fleet finally retreated, they had lost 4,000 ships. The Scourge had lost nothing that couldn't be regrown in hours. The second battle was worse. The Scourge had studied consortium tactics and countered them perfectly. 5,000 more ships were destroyed. The Scourge advanced deeper into consortium space. In the emergency council meeting that followed, panic had replaced the usual diplomatic calm. Species that had existed for 10,000 years were facing extinction. Their conventional warfare tactics, refined over millennia, were useless against an enemy that learned and adapted faster than they could react. Ambassador Tavex looked across the table at Chen. Her scales were pale with stress. We need help. Your special forces. Your unconventional tactics. We need everything you have. Chen was quiet for a long moment. If we do this, Earth wants full partnership status in the consortium. Complete access to your technology, your resources, your collective knowledge, and we command the operation. Impossible. One of the other delegates protested. You've been in space for barely a century. You cannot command. Then you can lose on your own, Chen said flatly. We're not asking. This is the price. You want humanity's help? You get it our way. Ah, Chen 7. Ah, Frunhor. The council voted. It wasn't even close. Survival trumped pride. Within a week, human military advisors were embedded with every major consortium fleet. They brought with them ideas that made the alien commanders uncomfortable. Guerrilla tactics against a hive mind. Psychological warfare against an enemy with no individual psychology. Asymmetric warfare against an enemy that outnumbered them 1,000 to 1. But more than that, they brought human special forces operators. And those operators had a plan. Captain James Rodriguez stood in the briefing room aboard the consortium flagship, looking at representatives from a dozen alien special operations units. They were good, well-trained, experienced, but they had trained for conventional special operations, intelligence gathering, sabotage, precision strikes against enemy installations. What Rodriguez was proposing was different. The Scourge has command nodes, he explained, pointing at the holographic display showing the enemy's structure. Biological hubs that coordinate the swarm. They're protected by thousands of ships and located deep in enemy territory. Getting to them is supposed to be impossible. A Crethean special operator, one of the survivors from the failed capture attempt months ago, spoke up. Supposed to be? Supposed to be. Rodriguez smiled grimly. Nothing is impossible. It's just a question of what you're willing to sacrifice to get it done. He brought up a tactical plan. 1. We're going to infiltrate the Scourge fleet, reach the command nodes, and destroy them. The mission will require 120 operators, 60 human, 60 consortium volunteers. And our chances of survival? Asked a Quillari commando. Honestly, maybe 10%, probably less. Rodriguez didn't sugarcoat it. This is a one-way mission for most of us, but if we succeed, we cut the head off the snake. The Scourge fleet will lose coordination. They'll be vulnerable to conventional attack. The room was silent. Then, slowly, hands went up. Volunteers. Warriors who understood that sometimes the only way to win was to be willing to pay a price that the enemy couldn't imagine paying. The mission launched 3 days later. The team used a captured Scourge ship, infected with a virus that made the hive mind think it was one of their own. It got them past the outer defenses. After that, it was up to the operators. Rodriguez's team moved through the organic corridors of the Scourge mothership like ghosts. They had studied the internal structure, memorized the patrol patterns, and practiced the route 100 times. But nothing could truly prepare them for the reality of being inside a living enemy ship. The walls pulsed. The air was thick with biological waste. Scourge warrior forms patrolled the corridors, each one the size of a tank with claws that could tear through steel. The operators moved in complete silence, using the ship's own biology to hide their presence. Lieutenant Sarah Kim led one of the teams toward the first command node. Her squad included 2 humans and 3 aliens who had learned to trust each other through weeks of brutal training. They reached the node chamber and planted the explosive charges, while Scourge warriors passed by meters away, unaware of the danger. The hard part came when they tried to leave. A patrol spotted them. Alarms echoed through the ship, a sound like a dying animal screaming. The Scourge converged on their position. "Go!" Kim shouted. "Everyone out. Now!" Her team ran, fighting their way through corridors now filled with enemies. They lost one of the alien operators, a young Horgathian, who sacrificed himself to buy the others time. They lost another at the extraction point, holding the door while the rest escaped. Rodriguez's team hit the second command node. Sergeant Marcus Webb's team hit the third. Other teams throughout the ship struck at critical systems, causing chaos and confusion. The Scourge had never experienced an internal attack before. They didn't know how to respond, but the defenders adapted quickly. By the time the operators tried to extract, the Scourge had figured out what was happening. They sealed the exit routes. They flooded the corridors with warriors. They were learning. Rodriguez made the call. "All teams, detonate on my mark. We're not getting out of here. Make it count." "Sir," one of his team members said quietly. "That means—" "I know what it means, Corporal. We knew this might be a one-way trip. Better to take them with us than let them kill the galaxy." He switched to the general frequency. "All teams, this is Rodriguez. It's been an honor serving with you. For Earth, for the consortium, for everyone depending on us. 3, 2, 1, mark." 37 operators triggered their charges simultaneously. The explosions ripped through the Scourge mothership, destroying command nodes and critical systems. The ship began to tear itself apart from the inside. Lieutenant Kim's team, one of the few to actually reach their extraction point, watched from their escape craft as the massive bioship exploded in a flash of organic fire. She closed her eyes and said a prayer for Rodriguez and the others. They had done the impossible. The question now was whether it had been enough. The answer came 3 hours later. Without their command nodes, the Scourge fleet began to break apart. Ships collided with each other. Formations dissolved into chaos. The hive mind was damaged, confused, unable to coordinate. The consortium fleet attacked immediately, exploiting the confusion. This time, conventional tactics worked. This time, the Scourge couldn't adapt fast enough. The battle raged for a week, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Scourge were destroyed, scattered, driven back into the dark space they had come from. The cost was terrible. Over 10,000 consortium ships destroyed, hundreds of thousands of warriors dead, and 83 Special Forces operators who would never come home. The memorial service was held on Tarsus Prime, attended by representatives from every species in the consortium. Names were read aloud. Human names and alien names together. Warriors who had given everything to save a galaxy that many of them had barely known. Ambassador Chen stood at the memorial wall, looking at the names. Captain James Rodriguez, Sergeant Marcus Webb, so many others. Young men and women who had trained their entire adult lives for missions exactly like this, who had known the risks and gone anyway. War Leader Kravik stood beside her, his old scales dull but his posture respectful. They fought with honor, he said quietly. Not the honor of glory and recognition, the honor of duty and sacrifice. I understand now what you tried to tell me. Your special forces are not predators. They are guardians. Chen nodded, not trusting her voice to remain steady. Will humanity continue to produce such warriors? Kravik asked. As long as there are threats, Chen replied. As long as there are people who need protecting. Yes, we will always have soldiers willing to go into the dark places and do the hard things. It's who we are. The galaxy had trembled before human infantry. It had learned to fear human special forces. But in the end, it had learned something more important. Humanity would stand and fight, not just for themselves, but for others. They would pay any price to protect the innocent, even when those innocents had once been enemies. Earth received full partnership status in the Galactic Consortium. Human advisors helped restructure alien military doctrine, teaching them the lessons humanity had learned through thousands of years of warfare. Joint training programs were established. Human operators worked alongside alien commandos, sharing knowledge and building trust. But in classified briefings, on secure channels, senior military commanders from every species shared a quiet understanding. Humanity's special forces had shown only a fraction of what they could do. The operators who died destroying the Scourge had been willing to sacrifice themselves for a galaxy that was barely their ally. What would they be willing to do for their actual home? It was a question no one wanted to answer. Instead, they worked to make sure it would never need to be asked. They built alliances. They shared technology. They created a galaxy where humanity would never need to unleash the full potential of their special forces. Because after what they had seen, after what they had learned, every species in the galaxy understood one truth. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their ships, or their tactics, or their technology. It was their willingness to pay any cost, to bear any burden, to fight any fight, in defense of what they believed was right. The galaxy no longer trembled before humanity. Instead, it stood beside them, grateful for their strength, respectful of their sacrifice, and determined to never give them a reason to show just how far they could really go. Lieutenant Sarah Kim stood at the viewport of the transport, taking her back to Earth. Behind her, the stars of the consortium shone bright. Somewhere out there were the operators still serving, still training, still preparing for the next threat. And somewhere out there were the names of the fallen, etched in stone and memory. She saluted the darkness, a gesture that would mean nothing to the void but everything to her. Then she turned away and headed home, carrying the weight of survival and the memory of those who hadn't been so lucky. The mission was over. The war was won. But there would be others. There always were. And when they came, humanity would be ready, because that's what special forces did. They stood between the darkness and the light. They operated in the shadows, so others could live in the sun. And they never, ever quit.